So by popular demand, I've decided to make a video on how to use acrylic paint. I'm going to be demonstrating on this boot lid here. It's just an old VL boot lid with some flaky paint and a bit of rust there. I'm not going to be getting too involved in the repairs. This is mainly just for a demo. The panel is a throw-out panel anyway. So we had some acrylic clear sitting here in the cupboard. I didn't actually go out and specifically buy that, but that's basically a full can. And always read the instructions when you're using paint, because different manufacturers will be different. But this one says 1 part clear to 1.5 parts thinner, which we've got here. So that's basically just the acrylic thinner. You can swap that for some gum wash. It's pretty widely done in the trade when using acrylic products. And this is our primer here, the Nason. And I'm going to be using the primer in the suction fed gun. Advantages to leaving your 1K primer in a suction fed gun is that some of the acrylic primers seem to settle down to the bottom. Now this is a good one, it doesn't do it too bad. All you need to usually do is just give it a bit of a shake up in the morning, and a little bit of thinners will spray out at the start, whatever was left in that chamber, and then it'll be right to go. But some of them really like settling down. So if you have that in a gravity fed gun, that settle is going to settle down in here, and you just about have to pull the gun apart every single time you use it. But I'm going to be using this gun for my base coat and clear coat. I don't actually have any acrylic base coat because it's quite rare these days. I will say it's something more that the DIY guy or someone at home really wants to use, but if possible, just hire a spray booth out and use some 2-pack paint, because it's a lot better, it's far superior, and it's just about obsolete, I believe. It's very rarely used these days. But anyway, we'll go right through the gun settings and the tip sizes later on, and we'll just start getting some prep work done on this boot. So yeah, just some 180 grit. I'll be finishing that off with some 320 grit before I prime it. I'll probably just put 2 coats of primer on it. Another good thing about acrylic is that it dries so quick, and then I'll just be going over the top of that primer with some 500 grit, and we'll get some color onto it. So that's our prep work done. It really was just a quick one. If I was doing anything that I cared about, I would have done it a bit better, but for the purpose of just a demonstration, that's gonna be fine. You know, like we've got big scratches here and it's not really feathered out properly, but that's just fine. Probably a good idea to give it a bit of a wipe down before we go and put primer on it. 99% of the time I've found it's not really necessary to go and use wax and grease remover before the primer stage, but if you have got any big bits of oil, or if you've got a compressor that spits out water and oil from the air lines, it's probably a good idea too. But yeah, next up we'll go and get some 1K primer on. One thing you've got to make sure you do when you're using these guns is make sure that this hole here isn't blocked up. Because if that's blocked up, well then you'll get no air coming into the gun and nothing will come out of the gun. But apart from that, these things are pretty easy to set up. I don't even run a regulator on it. I'll just listen to it and I'll just about know where it should be. If it seems like you're getting overspray all over the place, well then maybe just crank the pressure down. But if it's coming out too slow and orange peely, then turn it up a bit. But I'll go and turn the booth on and we'll start getting a couple of coats on. One thing I thought I'd make a quick mention too about acrylic primers is that they're not all the same. The other primer that you see up there in the corner was a concept acrylic primer, and that stuff is absolutely terrible. It's totally incompatible with any 2-pack base coats. However, this Nason stuff, I swear by it. I use it for cut throughs, it dries quickly, it sands well, and look, I can't tell you which one's gonna work unless they're the ones that I've specifically used. There's loads of different ones on the market, and you're just going to have to try them and see which ones work for you. So I think that's just about going to do us for what we're doing. There's no actual filler repairs there if there was filler there. A good thing to do when you're using acrylic is less coats, but say if I had a filler repair here, I would put 2 coats on, let it dry out, because 2 coats won't take long to dry. Give it a quick scuff by hand, just with say some 500 grit, and then need be, you can go and whack another coat over, and that next coat's gonna really not take long to dry, rather than trying to load it all up in one, and then you've got like a big amount of paint on there that's gonna take longer to dry. That's just something that I've figured out myself over the years, and as you can see here, it's that's not far off being dry. 2 or 3 minutes, that's going to be right to give a scuff back, and we'll get some base coat colour on. So I'm going to be using the DeVilbiss GPI. I got this gun recently from Spray Guns Direct in the UK. The thing that appealed to me is that it comes with a 1.4mm tip on it, but you can also get a 1.6 and a 1.8mm tip, and they're easy to change over. So the 1.6 is going to be perfect for our acrylic clear. I'll leave the 1.4 on for our 2-pack base coat, and 1.8 would be good, say, for your primer stage. So this gun, if there's people out there that just don't paint all that often, but they want a good quality gun that can do it all, rather than having to buy a primer gun, a base coat gun, and a clear coat gun, this gun would just about do it all, and it's reasonably priced, and it's good quality, and it's probably going to last a lifetime if it's anything like the rest of the DeVilbisses. But it really does look like the DeVilbiss GTI, and I think it's probably made out of the same molds. But anyway, we'll get on to giving this a sand back and get some base coat on. Okay, so that primer's dry. I'm just going to give it a quick scuff by hand with one of these 500 soft back sanding sponges. It's sanding back really nicely, and that didn't take long at all to dry. I do still believe 1K primers, a good 1K primer does have its place in a workshop these days, but acrylic clears, I wouldn't bother using them. You can get 2-pack clears that dry quite quick these days, and you won't have any problems with it later on down the track for refinishing. Bit of wax and grease remover. Get our base coat colour in the gun. Always use the filter. Obviously make sure you're wearing your gloves and your respirator. I just chose this colour because it's cool. I think it's the Holden Atomic. And we'll give it a tack rag and blow it down with the air at the same time. It's a pretty important stage, getting your tack ragging done correctly, and also you've got to make sure that the environment you're spraying in is nice and clean. I probably should be wearing some spray overalls, but I'm not, and yeah, it's not a big deal. So when you hear me referring to this as 2-pack base coat, that just means that it is a compatible base coat with the 2-pack clears. It doesn't mean that I put hardener into that base coat. So it's similar to your acrylic products, whereas all you do is just use reducer in it. So just some thinners in there. You know, this base coat is 2-to-1, but from memory, I think most of the acrylic base coats were also 1-to-1. Most acrylic clears, from my experience, are 1-to-1, but the one we're using here was 1-to-1.5. So it uses a little bit more thinners than the other ones that I'm used to. I can't imagine the acrylic base coats being much different to apply. I'm really testing my memory. It's been quite a long time since I had used any acrylic base coat, but similar application. Just put it on until it's covered, and just make sure you're not getting train tracks. I've sped the video speed up just for this section here till double speed, just to stop the video from getting too long. But if you guys hang right around to the end, we're going to go right through the polishing stage and everything to get you guys up to speed on how to use acrylic clear coats. Okay, so I've given the gun a quick clean out, and I'll show you guys how to change the fluid needle over and fluid tip. So take the back off first. I was always told to pull these out before you pull the fluid tip off, because I guess over years and years, if that's sitting up against here, you could cause a little bit of wear up the front there. It's probably not really going to be the biggest deal, but over time it may make a difference, and it doesn't take any longer to do it that way. So always get the right sized ring spanner when possible. Some spray guns come with a spanner, but this one's sort of a budget version for these guys, for the developers guns, so it doesn't come with it. Doesn't come with a cleaning brush either. But what have we got here? So that is the 1.8, and this one must be the 1.6. It is written just on the side of the tip itself, so if you get the boxes mixed up, it's not going to be a big deal. Put that back on, tighten it back up, and grab that other needle. Probably a good idea to keep the other one in here so we don't damage it when it's not in use. Make sure you don't lose that spring. And whack our air cap back on, and we're right to go with our 1.6 for clear coat. Usually for 2K clear, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 is fine, but acrylic I've found, not that I use it that much, but I've used 1.4 before, and it just comes out a little bit claggy and just not that good. So we'll see how the 1.6 goes. It's a good idea to use your respirator whenever you're mixing, but for this instance it makes it a little bit hard to talk to you guys, and I'll just keep my head away from it a bit. So get into our clear here. No need to stir it before you put it in there. It doesn't seem to separate, most clears anyway that I've known of. So we'll go 200 mils of clear, and then so 1 to 1 would be if I went up to 400, and then half of that again because it was 1 to 1.5. So we'll go up to 500. We'll keep to their ratios to start off with. May need a touch more. It has been sitting there for a while. Sometimes paint that's been sitting around for a while may need a touch more reducer in it. So basically the difference between 2K and 1K is, you notice all I put in there was just the reducer, so no hardener. 2K means that hardener goes in with the clear coat or top coat, and it dries with the chemical reaction, rather than this dries through the evaporation of the solvents. And basically you could leave this for 10 years and get a thinner's rag. So once you put it on your panel, you could get a thinner's rag and it would still freshen up because it's got no hardener in there to actually make it go rock hard. And we're right to start putting that into the gun. When using acrylic clear, don't be shy to put loads on, because you're going to want it on there to polish it off later, to polish it up later. So anywhere I've been told sort of from 6 to 10 coats is what you want when you're using acrylic clear. Now, if you're doing this at home, I'd probably recommend using a tack rag prior to putting your clear coat on. In this instance, I'm in a spray booth and I don't really think it's going to be necessary. Another thing you may have noticed me blowing air over the panel. If you're at home and you're in a dusty garage, you're probably going to create more troubles than good if you're blowing air on it, because you'll create little vortexes, and anything that's on the walls will come and land into your paint, whereas in this spray booth I'm pretty much protected from all the dust outside. So let's get some clear on. I'll get the booth going. So with your first coat of clear, you probably don't want to put it on too heavy. If you put it on really wet, well then you may end up dragging some of those metallic particles down, and the idea of putting that last coat of metallic on medium wet is so that those particles, the metallic particles, are going to stand up. They will catch the reflection of the light and give you the effect that you want. So probably once you've got your first coat on, you're pretty right, and you can go and start putting it on a little bit heavier. But yeah, as you'll see later, it's probably not recommended to go and put it on as heavy as 2-pack. I'd have to say the best thing about acrylic paint is that how quick it dries. You'll see here, basically as soon as I put this on, it's right to go on with another coat and it's tacked straight off. So that's my first coat down. Compared to 2-pack, it's a totally appalling orange peely finish. And I literally just put that on straight away, and that's touch dry already. So, I mean, we're looking at about 23 degrees Celsius. I think I've said about 73 Fahrenheit for you Americans. So we're right to go straight on with our next coat. And again, I have sped that video up. That's at 1.5 times for this second coat. Second coat down, and same thing, that's flashing like straight off. I can touch that already and barely even leave a fingerprint in it. I'm definitely going through a lot of material, so if that was 2-pack, I would have used half of that, I would imagine, and it would be done and I would have a bigger film thickness. But so it's looking like I'm going to have to mix a bit more up. But I doubt we would have used it for anything else. Polishing is really where you start to get your good finishes with this. So I'm going to leave this overnight. It's late in the afternoon anyway. If I was in a hurry, I could whack it out in the sun for a couple of hours and that'd be right to polish. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 3 different sections in the polishing. So one section will be sanded and polished. One section will be polished without sanding, and the other one will just be not polished, so it'll give you an idea of the different finishes that you can get. So I'm just going to keep pumping more clear onto this. If I was to leave that with 2 coats, which is what we do with most 2-pack jobs, I would just about guarantee, as soon as I started sanding it and polishing it, I'd go straight through, and you definitely wouldn't have something that would last very long at all. So this is our 3rd coat, and I've sped this one up to 2 times video speed. That's our 3rd coat down, and it's starting to look a little bit better. It's starting to get a bit of depth in it now. Gun settings, I've just left that one just right out, so it's just about to fall out. Full fan, and say about just over 1 bar or just under 20 PSI. That's going to vary. Sometimes you've just got to see what works. I mean, I never learnt to paint with one of these things on, so I used to just have this. I didn't know what pressure I was using. You just have it maxed out at the wall, and you just find the sweet spot. But again, that's right to go straight over. That's our 4th coat down, and yeah, we definitely are starting to get a bit more depth out of it. It's starting to look a little bit better. But we are going through shitloads of paint. So that was just about a full can there. There's basically nothing left in the gun, and we probably still want to put another coat or 2 over it. So you might look at it litre by litre. Yeah, acrylic's cheap. Like that was maybe, probably you'd get that for 20 bucks or something like that, maybe 30, depending on where you get it from. But you know, you get some 2K might go around the $30 a litre by the time you've got yourself a 7.5 litre kit, but you're going to use half the amount of it. There might be some old dudes saying, man, you're not doing this right, and if you believe I'm doing anything wrong, well, leave it in the comments. You're welcome to bag me out, but we're getting actually fairly okay results considering. I guess another reason we're going through a fair bit is because it's got the 1.6 on it. But I wouldn't recommend painting acrylic anything below sort of 10 degrees, definitely, because I did this job once ages ago with a tradesman of mine, and it was cold in Melbourne, and it started what they call blooming. It'll go like all milky and powdery. But the tradesman I was working under, he said, don't worry about it. You just keep painting, and it just polishes up. And it polishes up fairly easy compared to 2-pack, because the buff just heats it back up and then it just melts it in really easy. So, couple more coats of clear on. So that is our 6 coats of base coat, and after I put that last one on, I just smashed it on like really wet. Not 100% sure exactly what's going on, not sure how well it's even showing up on the video, but all through here I'm getting a lot of discoloration. Whether or not that's just in the clear or whether or not the acrylic clear has actually pulled that base coat down, I really don't know, but we'll find out tomorrow morning once we start buffing it up. Could quite well just be that it's the 2-pack base coat not agreeing with the acrylic, and this is just another one of those reasons that I highly recommend not using acrylic. If possible, avoid this stuff like the plague. It's terrible. I'm only doing this just for the sake of making a video. I really want to stress that I would never do this to anyone's car, and I would never do it to my own car. There is no advantages I can see whatsoever in using acrylic clear coat. I mean, the only time you would use it, I guess, is if you're at home and you don't want to go and use 2-pack in your garage. But as I say, all you're really going to do is create problems for people like me when you want it done properly. So I've left that overnight. It's the next morning now, and it definitely hasn't held as good as a gloss as any 2-pack, but that discoloration, that's just about gone now. So it must have just been in that top layer of clear. I think in hindsight, I probably did put it on a little bit heavy. So maybe just keep that in mind, not to go on as heavy as what I did with that last coat, and just try and get your gloss out of your polishing stage, which is what I'm going to be taking you guys through now. So I'll give you guys a look at the products and that I'm going to be using. Just a rotary buff here. This one's a variable speed, not necessary but handy. We've got our, so going from the first stage will be the Super C cutting compound. There's loads of different compounds on the market. This is a glaze, so that's like a swirl remover. The 3M Perfect it used to be called anyway, machine polish now it's called. And then just a final wax to go over it to finish it off with. But before we do that, I've cleaned out a bucket here, got a block there, and some 2000 grit. You could probably go maybe even 1200 and then go over the top of that with 2000 if you wish. I've even been told by some of the older guys, they said, oh, you used to be able to even polish up 800 grit with acrylic because it just polishes up so easy. And I've got the cutting pad here, and that's for the glaze. And a lot of the time, just with your wax, you can we used to just do it by hand, but we have got the other option of putting it on with a orbital sander with a polishing pad on it. So that will actually, the fact that it goes around in an orbit will actually help remove some of those swirl marks left behind by the buff. I like to plug the buff in and then just get the high pressured air with the air line and just clean all the compound out from the day before for whenever it was used last, because that seems to go hard and you can create swirl marks if you leave any of that stuff in there. You can replace the air line just with a screwdriver. Obviously be careful you're not putting it in the wrong way and it kicks back at you. But I found just with the airline, it blows it out rather than sometimes you can chew your pad up if you're using a screwdriver, and it can dig into it. And we've also got one of these microfiber cloths. It's probably getting towards the end of its life, probably about due for a clean out, but you can just replace that just with a nice clean cotton cloth. You just feel them, and if they're nice and soft, well then that's probably going to be good enough for polishing. That's what we always used to use. So it's pretty important that you do wet sanding when you're using acrylic, because if you go and dry sand it, like you guys might watch some of my other videos, and I've got that little orbital sander, and we've got this Kovacs 1,500 grit sandpapers, and I just sand into it, and it turns to dust straight away, and it sands quite easily. Whereas if I was to use that on this, it would just clog those discs straight up. But for some reason, the wet sanding is definitely the way to go when you're working with acrylic. And if you go to rework this stuff, you really want to use wet sanding as well. And that is one of the biggest issues that you will have with acrylic. So it all went fine. This job, I'd say it was definitely a success, this review or this demonstration for you guys. But it's down the track. It's later on down the track that you will have your issues. So you know, it might be a year or something, and you get a scratch, and then you're like, oh cool, I'll just fix that, you know, I know how to do it now, I'll just sand it back and put some primer on it, and then when you'll go to put your base coat on, it could fry up, I don't know, it may not, it doesn't always do it. Again, that's probably just down to the compatibility of the specific materials. Like yeah, you might just say, well, that's acrylic paint, it says acrylic on it, but obviously different manufacturers do put a couple of different ingredients in there differently. I'm no chemist, I don't know what they put in there, but I know what works and what doesn't work, and some of them work, some of them don't work. It's just down to you to basically figure out the ones that do and don't work. So yeah, as you can see here, I'm just finishing off that sanding just by hand. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Obviously just keep it even, you know, you don't want to go and push your fingers into one section or sand one section too long. You just want to sand it all down evenly. Make sure that bucket's clean, because one little bit of sand will create a big scratch. So that should have removed most of the orange peel right there, and then we'll just give that a buff up. So this section, remember, is going to be flattened down with 2000. This is going to be buffed without being sanded, and that's going to be off the gun. So we'll give you a 3-stage of the kind of finishes that you can get with acrylic. So as I mentioned just before, just giving that buff pad a quick clean out just with the compressed air on an air blower, and spitting the buff up at the same time. And straight on to our cutting stage. I've just put a little bit of that Juice Super C cutting compound down. I find it cuts up really well, but it does leave some swirl marks behind, which is why we'll be going over it with the glaze after that swirl remover, the 3M stuff, and then I'll give it a wax after that. A lot of the guys back in the day used to use lamb's wool polishing pads. They're not really widely used anymore because they will leave like really big swirl marks behind. But if you're finding it hard to cut something up and it's just taking ages, well then maybe look at getting one of those lamb's wool pads in. And between each stage of polishing, you want to make sure you get as much as you can of the previous compound off. So that's being cut. I then wipe all of that cutting compound off, and then we'll continue on and get that glaze on. You don't want to overdo it with your compounds either. That's probably all you need. That's plenty. I find it's just easier to put it on the panel because it's exactly where you need it. And if you're good with the buff, well then you're not going to make a total mess about it. You just lift it up in the right angle and it's not going to end up all over the place. So I did cut a lot of the footage out of the polishing stage, but this last stage here is what I said before. I'm just giving it a hand wax, and then I'll just be wiping that off, and that's going to leave us with our finished product. We'll have a look over it. And that's going to be it for the video. I really hope you guys have enjoyed watching this video. I had a great time making it. It's something different for me. So that's the finished product. I think that this demo has been a success. I'm actually quite happy with the results I was able to get. So follow these methods and you should be able to achieve the same results. One thing I did notice is that polishing acrylic compared to 2-pack is a hell of a lot easier. I spent the best part of a day on that cortina over there, but that really just took 5 minutes and that was cut. You could barely even see any sanding scratches. There's one or two here. If I wanted to keep buffing it, I would get them out, no dramas, but for the purpose of this video, I think you can really see the difference. And this is a line here, so you can see that's a lot flatter there compared to the orange peel that you've got here. Not sure how well that's showing up on the video, but it's definitely an improvement. And then you can see here, just from the line here, that was polished but not sanded, and that was off the gun. So even just with a buff without sanding it, you're going to improve your finish. But it's one of those things that it's an ongoing thing, especially with acrylic. It won't last anywhere near as long as 2-pack, and you will need to continue polishing it down the track to continue to keep that nice finish on it. And that's probably another part of the reason why you do want a fair bit of it on there, say 6 coats. That's what I've been told anyway. I don't use it that much. The last time I used acrylic clear, I think, was when I was at trade school, and they made us do a door, just a panel, just for the sake of knowing how to use it. And yeah, I've enjoyed making this video. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching it. If you have, give it a thumbs up. Any questions, I'll do my best to get back to you. Now you've seen this video, get out there and paint some shit. Thanks for watching, and this has been another Gunman production. Goodbye.